Oh, they had the gremlins attacking us for a while, but we're back. Josip, how are you?
I was sucked into a vortex there, mate. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry about
mate,
that.
you're back. It's good to have you back.
Look,
and
I
it's
was trying to say that we have a couple of special guests from Melbourne Knights, and we, like you said, we have had a lot of undertones about youth development and discussions about methods and approaches to youth football. And Melbourne Knights is synonymous with that over the years. We've seen what the club has done to players that have come through their ranks and moved on into AIS and national selections and play internationally with fantastic careers. So we have the opportunity to speak with Club President PAVE JUSUP and Junior MiniRoos Co-Ordinator Steve VUKASOVIC. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hey, gentlemen, how are we?
Thanks, Josip. Tonci. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello, PAVE. How are you, Steve? Josip.
Gentlemen, thanks for joining us on the show tonight. I guess good. Thank you very much, mate. I just wanted to, quickly, how are you feeling about the year so far, PAVE, with the Knights seniors, and how it's all going? And got yourselves to mid-table, a little bit of breathing, easier breathing this week?
Look, I think the big plus this season, as opposed to seasons in the past, is we've started to beat the teams. In the past few years, we've gotten up against the local big team, Avondale, Oakley, etc., but then faltered against the teams that you should be beating. If you look at the table, Lions 3-0, Hume City 3-0, Dandy City 5-0, fourth last Heidelberg we lost 4-0, which is really disappointing of all the results. But the games we should have won, we've won. Against Avondale, we didn't do more than what we got in that game. South likewise, and they're up the top for a reason. So beating the teams that you should beat, should be fine.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully the guys can give some inspired performances to the juniors, and this is what we wanted to have a chat with you guys about here tonight. We've seen that you've had a visit from Josip Šimunić and Petar Krpan over the last couple of weeks, and they've come around to Sydney as well and had some chats with some coaches up that way. After the visit, what have you taken on board from the fine gentlemen?
So the reason for their visit was to begin with to open a dialogue with clubs in Australia. The way wings for them to glean some insight on the environment where we and how we do things and where we can improve, and likewise them giving us some tips and ideas and access to information that they kind of have. We had a meeting obviously in Melbourne with all the Croatian clubs in Melbourne that have juniors. Likewise in Sydney was on the line. Melbourne was Adelaide and North Perth and Guelph and Tasmania, and likewise in Sydney they had pretty much I think every club in New South Wales and ACT. Look, they were quite interested in how we operate as a club, because who we are, but they don't know the inner workings of how many teams you have, what division they play in, the structure of the club. Yeah. So things from both sides that were exchanged that you led down the track.
Now, PAVE, I guess in the past, sorry, Josip, continue.
Go ahead, mate. Go ahead.
I was going to say, PAVE, in the past, there's been attempts to sort of make that Domovina and Diaspora, that bridge. With Josip Šimunić, who's an ex-Knights player, an ex-playing legend, but he's now going into coaching. When we had him on episode 2 of the Oz Cro Soccer Show, he really talked about nurturing talent, and he seems to be the perfect ambassador or perfect link man between the Domovina and Diaspora, particularly as far as football. Is that how the Nogometni Savez in Croatia perceives Josip, and is using him as that sort of conduit between the Croatian clubs in the Diaspora and Croatian football clubs in Croatia?
Yes, absolutely. His main role for coming here was just easy transition and introductions between the clubs, who he all knows basically, and the people he works with over there. A lot of the discussion was around juniors and opening up a pathway into Europe, where Joe's also involved, in the background with NK Rudeš, which are I think second in the section currently, and the Savez was at, like you said, being able to open up some doors at junior clubs in Croatia for some of our more talented players throughout Australia. But I'll leave it to Steve to kind of explain a little bit more, and he's dealt with that side of things.
Yeah, so with obviously our existing relationship with Joe and my personal relationship with Joe, we obviously, if you want to call it, we've formed a program that's mutually exclusive to Melbourne Knights juniors, where we will have our directors potentially put a few names forward that they may recognise as potential talent to potentially travel overseas. Why is it mutually exclusive? It just means Melbourne Knights players will have the privilege, but what it does allow for is that we've obviously, committed to financially supporting our players making that transition over there should they be successful. So we think, it's a point of difference for our club. It's a point of difference for our juniors as well. And look, it's a life or an eye-opening experience for any player that wants to ply their trade. It doesn't always work out. Living abroad has its own sort of advantages and disadvantages. And to sort of have that experience, is quite beneficial for the kids at our club. You would have noticed that a couple of players that have played at some other Croatian clubs. Obviously, Josip was recently over at NK, which as was Marko Bulic, and I spoke to those two separately, and their experiences, they second to none. Just to sort of obviously wake up every day in that professional environment. Yes, Joe's a semi-professional. Mark was in a professional experience. What it's like in Europe, the coaching, and even the language barriers and the cultural barriers and things like that. So there's a lot of things there to combat when you think about that. But what we've done is obviously we've established this program. There's a few other things that we obviously need to work through, but it plays. So.
Yeah, that's an amazing outcome from what could potentially happen for some young players to find their way. In the immediate feedback from your faithful on the ground, have you received any feedback from parents, coaches, players themselves, possibly even?
Yeah, definitely. Look, all the feedback's been really positive. Obviously, for a lot of young kids dream, to play the sport they love, in the best countries around the world, and look to play in Europe or in Croatia, be a dream come true for many of these kids, irrespective of whether it's Croatia or Italy or England, or it is. I think that connection that we have, obviously, with Joe in Croatia, with a lot of our kids still at Melbourne Knights, being of a Croatian background, it gives them that opportunity or something to aspire to. When Joe was out here the other week, he obviously spoke to all of our kids, and the kids asked questions, and there's some great, right? And there's a lot of learnings there. So, and Joe made it pretty clear, and I think made it pretty clear in your show that it's not an easy transition for anyone, right? And that's where we sort of step in the club as well, I guess, as well, just to sort of say, look, making that transition, if it was to eventuate, we'd be here to support you in some capacity. There's a lot of risks you need to take, move abroad, right? So, again, as I said, feedback was extremely positive. So from players, parents, and, even from the clubs that I have friendships with as well, they've also said, like, something like that is a point of difference, right? So hopefully, we could attract some other kids,
Just want to add to what Steve said.
Brilliant.
The other interesting part of the guys coming out here, having a look at training and the vibe that was around the place, I think we forget in Australia, because we're so far away from the center of soccer in the world, which is obviously Europe. We forget how big and global the game is, and we get stuck in where we are and what we're playing and who we're playing. And people really dream these days like they used to. I want to go play in Europe, because it's a bridge very, very far, and it hasn't happened for a long time. And if this can give a spark on a young kid that wants to make, because at the end of the day, a club can only do so much. So there's cultural issues when it comes to PlayStation and other distractions and school and whatever else.
Yeah.
But if the visit and this partnership can provide a spark, where it's up to the player to make the difference in extra training and the extra commitment to go overseas, well, I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, we've had a lot of players, young players, that have made Luka Skorko, Niki Vlahovic, young Bulic as well, on the show, and they've all talked about sacrifices and the sacrifices that they need to make. So having someone like Josip Šimunić and Petar Krpan here would have really inspired the young guns. But Steve, I want to ask you now, obviously this is a project that's just sort of in its infancy, and it's got to be looked at long term. But in the short term, have there been any tangible benefits for some of the coaches? Were they given some little words of insight from either Petar or Josip? And have they started incorporating that in some of the training sessions that they use at Knights?
Yeah, really great question. Obviously, first observations as soon as we walked out onto the main pitch here at Knights Stadium, Petar took me by the shoulder and he said, that they can't be doing one-on-ones like that. It's got to be in a more confined space. I think it was a standard sort of under 10 sort of pitch, which is I think 30 by 40 meters, and the kids were playing one-on-one. So just that immediate sort of insight into, how these kids should be coached.
Technical side of things.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
And the reasons behind
the big emphasis was on technical ability at that young age from MiniRoos age. So you're looking at your under sevens right through to potentially your under 13s. They were actually impressed with our Mini Knights programs, which I know some other clubs sort of run as well, which is sort of like a 3 to 6 year old program, which is great as an introduction to football. I said that your best coaches have got to be your junior setup, right? So your most experienced coaches have got to be developing the kids at the and from a technical standpoint as well. Look, your body will mature, in terms of, I guess, your speed and your agility and things like that. That all comes with growth as well, right? But they were just some of the insights, they were able to share with us immediately. I know because we've got such close links with Joe, etc. We regularly speak with him, and always sort of bounce some ideas off him, and he's always a good sounding board for these sorts of things. So we've got a slight advantage, but it's always good because some of the coaches will run it past the TD, and the TD will even come by me, and me with the role I play. It's just good that we can share this knowledge, so it's quite beneficial. So
excellent. Just to pinch a little bit from Pave's notes before about dreaming. Pave, you are probably the best person in a position to talk about how academies tout themselves as to be the answer for a lot of solutions for young players, and then sell them the dream of going overseas for tours, which could cost the family somewhere upwards of $10,000 just for the young individual on the tour. And when you put it into reference with what you're trying to achieve here for your club and community, is in total contrast to that $10,000 per player and giving someone an opportunity to dream. How do you see that?
Before I get to that question, I just want to also add an interesting point arising from the visit. The Croatian Federation was equally as interested in our in our girls program, probably even more so. Because obviously Croatia's national women's team is not that great, and they're quite behind the eight ball in reference to the men's national team. So they wanted to see how things are done in Australia in that space and what we do and how we do it, because their women's or girls juniors aren't so great. So they were quite interested in that. Well, they were interested in the boys too, but they were a lot more interested in the girls than what I expected them to be. Put it that way.
Okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to basically catch up in world football terms, so that they can put the Croatian women's national team on an equal footing with the men's. That's their kind of ultimate aim in the next decade. And so they're kind of going on fact-finding missions around the world to glean what they can in that space and basically turbocharge it so they can catch up with the rest of the world. And obviously Australia is in the top 5, correct me if I'm wrong. So they've come to the right place. And obviously they've been to America, I think, about a month ago, Canada also. So these so-called progressive Western democracies where women's sport has was kind of pushed and promoted a lot in traditional societies. So they're quite interested in that. But as I was saying, what I wanted to say about these academies, look, academies sometimes have a place. I was speaking to a player who was looking at bringing into Australia about 6 months ago from Croatia, and he plays in the second division over there. And he didn't end up coming because he just got a government grant from the government over there, and he's a soccer-specific psychologist. So he's currently a player, 23, 24 years old, and his job, he works for Dinamo Zagreb. His job is to psychologically prepare players for a transfer overseas. Then you look at, for example, Nikola Vlasic as an example. Blanka Vlasic's brother, his dad is, I think, Croatia's top athletics coach. And if you read interviews about Joško Vlasic talking about his son, that was his project. He worked his whole life, essentially, from when he was a kid, prepared him to become a professional player. If there was academies here doing that seriously and earnestly, they'd have a place. But really, for a lot of it is, former players that don't want to work a normal job like the rest of us and want to earn a living, which is legitimate. But the part where it's not legitimate is where they sell a dream that is unrealistic. And like you said, they take people on a tour. And if that was presented, we're going on a holiday, you're going to play some soccer on the side, man, it's fine. There'll be people that want to pay for that, and that's all good. But there is unscrupulous characters within that area, and I know that the FFA, we've been speaking to them for a while about it, they're not sure how to tackle it and curb it, because it is a free country, and there is restriction of trade kind of issues around it. But I wouldn't recommend anyone to go to that unless it was a one-on-one specific training for a specific purpose, and you found the right person that will tell you honestly whether your kid's got a chance or not, and not just say yeah and take the money and who cares. So look, academies have a place, a limited place and a limited purpose, and they can be helpful to help it along. But the world over, the tried and true environment is club, and even better if you can stay with a club from beginning to end, because it obviously fosters loyalty, mutual loyalty, club to player, player to club, and obviously a lot of good things can flow from that.
Just on the women's, thanks for that, PAVE. Sorry, just on the women's note before, and did the guys share with you whether or not there's a concerted effort back in Croatia within the women's leagues, and how they want to go about that?
Yeah, so they've put in a massive investment in the last 3 or 4 years, basically since the World Cup, that influx of money that came in. I think they said they spent 100 million kuna last year on infrastructure for women's sport, so 15 million euros for the year. They've now paid, or they've obviously they had a women's national league. They've got now under 15s, 17s, 19s, seniors, where all the travel for the players is paid for by the federation. So when they say Nick plays against Osijek, the whole club travels as a group by bus, and it's paid for. And they're trying to do everything they can to identify these players and encourage them. Look, a lot of it is we've got our own cultural things when it comes to soccer. They've got the same thing in Croatia. So that sometimes you get some talented players that don't end up wanting to continue on. And so that's when they kind of step in and try and convince the family that it's, beneficial. But they've also instituted a selection process for the women's as the men's or the boys. Mm-hmm. So, it goes from your club, you get sent to your county, and from your county, you go to your region, and from your region, you go to the national one. So it goes, I think, from 1,000 players down to 80, and then the last 80 get selected into the final 20, which makes up your first national team, which is under 15s. And that's how they kind of look at them. And they've got obviously the 13s and 14s, which is basically their talent ID camps, where they kind of keep tabs on players. And like some of the stuff that they've got is phenomenal. Like they've got basically reports on every player where it'll have a photo, height, weight, attributes, notes from coaches. They're currently working on an app that's basically all coaches in Croatia that coach kids at the county level. So like the instructors, as they're called, are able to upload information about a certain player, whether it's a video, scouting report, or whatever that may be, in real time, and then that lets the higher ups kind of track how they're going. Yep. So they've got the obviously the old in coaching, down pat, but they're also embracing a lot of this new technology and using what they can with big data to make sure that their main aim is to make sure that we don't let any player slip through. And mm-hmm. Which is a perfect example where they probably could have had someone that of that quality if they were doing this 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
PAVE, having access to this type of cooperation, collaboration is obviously invaluable and just opening our eyes to the way professional clubs and countries do it in Europe. And it takes, obviously someone to grab the bull by the horns and do it. So kudos to the Knights for doing this. But, there's obviously a vacuum there that needs to be filled and can be filled by a club like the Knights. With the National Second Division and the proposed National Second Division launching, will that accelerate this type of program, for the Knights in your eyes? Because then it gives the Knights a bit more of a profile, nationally speaking, here in Australia?
Absolutely, it will. I think if you look at the Australian national youth teams in the last, say, 15 years, there was a period where to be selected for a national Australian youth team, you have to be playing for an A-League academy, like at the time. So a lot of our players were locked out. That's thankfully gone. But, you look at the teams that we had in the NSL and a lot of these players that even just became standard NSL players. If they were playing for us now, they probably would have made it to the A-League because we didn't have a shot window to put them into, to give them a chance to step up to the level that you're playing in. So, basically we're playing in the NPL now and the best we can hope for is one step above that, which is getting a player from here to the A-League. Whereas before, when you're at the top division, the best you could hope for was getting out of Australia. So we've taken a step back. It is what it is. But with the second division, definitely that shop window is just as important as getting these things that Steve said right in relation to coaching, structure, professionalism, and all those things. So having that ability to put a player on the market in a sense is just as important as all these other things. They're all kind of interlinked and interrelated.
Yeah. Very good. And just on the B League there, PAVE, how are you feeling about the way it's progressing and the Knights' position within that? Is that you're comfortable with the way it's going ahead?
Look, I'm comfortable. I think people would agree. We're playing now in the NPL, and kako bi rekao, smetamo, to Dinamo, to Dandy, to North Geelong, because we're in the same competition. We need to be out of this competition. And kind of get the how can I say, the order of things back in a manner that kind of is useful to everyone, where we can grab players from the lower divisions. We can also push players back down to help whoever needs to be helped. And our position is we want to get the community back behind us. And the only way we can do that is to offer them something that's different. Right now, there's no reason for someone from Dandy to make the drive down to Summer Street when they got Dandy, right next to them. And that's, it's a club that they've probably been with for 30 years, as long as they've been with the Knights. It's totally normal and legitimate. But in the long run, it hurts us because I went to Sydney 2 weeks ago with the guys from the Sabres, and Sydney's got one big club, Sydney United, and that's it. And that's why Sydney United's at the top of the table every year, because all the people, all the finances, all the passion, all the will goes towards one project. And in Melbourne, that's obviously not the case. And it's you wouldn't have North Geelong winning the Victorian Premier League in '92 had it not been the case. You wouldn't have probably had David Savinsky. You wouldn't have had Adrian Savinsky, Steve Horvath, etc. Bogdan Bonk come through the Pondiacs from Dinamo Pelican and the Rayhers from Dandy, etc. So, we've got advantages and disadvantages. We just want to try and capture the best of our situation for the benefit of our club, our community at large, and for soccer. I think if we can get an answer as to a start date by the end of this year, I'd be very happy, and I think we will get that.
That has been a circulating question in social media in recent weeks. Yeah,
I think it'll happen. Look, James Johnson has basically delivered on everything he said. He's unbundled the A-League. He's done X, Y, and Z, and he's taken his time and he's slowly and meticulously, but he has done it. And I think I don't think it's anymore. I think they're serious, and I think the A-League is in some problems at the moment with crowds, and obviously COVID has had an effect, but has had a bigger effect on AFL and other big sports. So I think they need a bit of a lifeline and a something to generate some buzz. And I think the second division would definitely do that, even with promotion and relegation to begin with, because I think if we were linked later in the track, I'd be much more inclined to take any notice of what's happening there in the league. Right now, I don't even know who's playing. I don't know who's top. I don't know who's there's nothing to do.
Sometimes you don't even know the round.
No, that is so true. That is so true. But one thing that there's a lot of interest in, Steve, obviously, is the community leagues and the junior leagues, the MiniRoos. They're starting their season this week. Finally, for the coaches, it's a chance to get the players excited about fair income games. But mate, behind the scenes, there must be so much that goes on. A lot of parents getting involved, the junior committee. Here's an opportunity just to give them out a bit of a shout out to everyone that's involved with the Melbourne Knights, the MiniRoos, the juniors, the community teams, etc., and wish them all the best for the coming season.
Yeah, definitely. You're totally with our brilliant committee at the Knights. There aren't many of them. Name them on one hand, but we've got a lot of people that work really hard behind the scenes. Obviously, Susie Collick being our president. You got Ivan Kroll, Chris Hitson-Nuts. I don't want to forget anyone. I'm sure, but the work these people do. Elliot as well, the work these people do behind the scenes. Just cooking the barbecue during match day. Parents to how to register kids. But as I said, it's not easy, and everyone would know, and I'm sure you guys know really well, being a volunteer, at club at any sort of level requires work. People do have jobs. People have other commitments. So it's these people that that clubs require to continue. Essentially, what is still a vehicle in our community are our soccer clubs. Right, it brings everyone together, and that's something that we're really proud of here at Melbourne Knights. That we've still been able to maintain that community feeling, but also produce some successful teams as well. And look, it's not just all about the football. It's about the fun and meeting new people, and that's what we want our kids to experience at our club, and to obviously create lifelong friendships, right? Because that's what it's all about. That's how we all know each other, right, guys? So that's the most important aspect of it all. But it'll kick off this week, and it'll be a long year. It's already kicked off for a lot of the teams in the junior super leagues, that for those teams that took part in that. But we're really looking forward to it. So
Good stuff.
Awesome. Wishing you guys all the very best. And tomorrow, the big Australia Cup clash between Melbourne Knights and Bulleen. That's at Knights Stadium, and the kickoff there is, I think it's at 7:30 p.m. Is that right, gents?
Yep.
7:30 p.m. So we're urging all the Melbourne and Victorian Croatians, indeed, to come out in mass numbers and support that. Gents, thank you very much for joining us on tonight's Oz Cro Soccer Show. Wishing you all the very, very best for the short-term, medium-term, and long-term future.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.